Good morning. Today I will be addressing the HR issues within JAK's Brewery and providing management of actionable recommendations to create a better work environment. Starting with the potential grievance, there are multiple bases for the union's pre-grievance request, the most likely of which is harassment, which is any unwanted physical or verbal behavior that offends or humiliates a person. Per Bill 168, workplace harassment stipulates that it is reasonable to interpret a threat of exercise physical force against a worker as a legitimate cause for harassment. Further, we have seen crude comments caused by CBC executives to be fired in 2015, as psychological harassment has become increasingly recognized. If threats persist over time, it begs the question of if harassment is present. In addition to harassment, the grievance may exist upon the basis of failure of duty to inquire into Ms. Reddy's mental health condition, as discussed in week 11, as per signs existed of her mental health being impacted from Sly's actions. Examples include her crying, Aldis's complaint, her appearance, and somehow management was oblivious to these states. This is similar to management's negligence to acknowledge potential harassment within the workplace. It should be noted that the grievance is most likely against Sly for harassment, but it could also be against management for said basis. Within the case, Sly's aggressive behavior within his department, profane language towards Jasmine, and his aggressive micromanaging tactics and diminishing tasks, and public berating and constant criticism, plus career intimidation, make a strong argument for psychological harassment, while him throwing the sandwich could actually raise concerns of physical harassment in lieu of the threat. Using the test for harassment, being for a reasonable person saw these actions being unwelcome by the receiving person, would harassment exist? Yes. And its evidence lied beyond the receiving end of the grievance for that. Further, the severity of the union's perspective could be detrimental to the business, as Article 17.2 of the CBA states harassment is just cause for dismissal. There are three steps Ness and Anna could take regarding the immediate concerns of Ms. Reddy. First is on their side of things, identifying the issues that they face, being the discomfort Jasmine faces in her current position, the cultural impact of the situation, and the potential harm of their expansion if Mr. Thomas is to be removed in a worst case scenario. They should approach the meeting to hear Ms. Reddy's current and future concerns in full and provide a solution that keeps Sly within the company, but addresses the cultural issue of his personality poses through mandatory education over either a suspension or break upon investigation. They don't want to set the precedent that harassment is acceptable, but there may be a way to aid their company and Ms. Reddy without hindering the expansion. Also, they can offer relocation for Ms. Reddy to work closer with the four members of the sales team versus directly to Mr. Thomas. If this is not resolved, they'll proceed to a formal grievance with an emphasis on not letting the issue go to arbitration, as resources, time, and reputation may be at stake. The first HR issue comes from building the job, as the job specifications being the required skill, knowledge, and the criteria for the job are not present and explicit in their hiring. This has been an issue in the recruiting process and will be discussed further. Secondarily, the duties and responsibilities per job are not explicitly stated, which leads to unaccountability and improper assignments of work, as can be seen with Ms. Reddy. Additionally, the lack of concrete duties and unqualified candidates is a result of poor job design, and the skill variety and within the assistant position is minimal, and the scopes of jobs within JAKs are nearly undefined. This raises an issue as Annika takes on HR and finance-related roles when people in those departments should be handling such issues, and Nesta is so focused on expansion, she does not notice blatant harassment within her workplace. The first step is to address the fundamental issue of building a job and gathering information the company needs per position. This allows the second step of creating comprehensive job postings to be made. And these would include specifications, duties, responsibilities, and standards for the performance of each job. Additionally, the current rules should be reevaluated and given definitive scope, allowing for skill variety and exact responsibilities. The second issue is filling the job, with an underlying issue being the recruitment process at JAKs. The first prominent issue is the need for company-wide recruiting objectives, which are absent in the hiring of Mr. Thomas, who's good for business, but bad for the business, as his cultural fit does not align with JAKs, and Ms. Reddy, who lacked the technical skills. When bringing in employees, a pool of candidates should be formed, as seen with the Google Recruiter video we watched in class, where each candidate is objectively viewed. The lack of KSAOs missing from the job descriptions will allow for the removal of halo biases within the interview process of Ms. Reddy and Mr. Thomas. Further, having multiple views would remove the individualized job requirements that Mr. Thomas had when he took the liberty of creating when he hired Ms. Reddy. Additionally, the improper use of informal hiring led to applicant pool being skipped and led to the wrong fit and value of people being hired. Additionally, nepotism is fundamental in JAK's hiring process, seen with Annika and Mr. Thomas, and could raise further issues when hiring going forwards. My recommendations are to piggyback off the evaluation created of the necessary job descriptions. Um, the first being there needs to be forecasted employment during the expansion process. By creating objectives and having the criteria for hiring, the KSAOs can be used to form a pool of applicants. HR and other staff members can be involved in the selection process, creating an objective, unbiased selection to generate value for the organization. New employees to JAK receive no orientation, as seen with Ms. Reddy. This hinders performance as employees are anxious and unaware of expectations, especially when the job does not clearly outline them. The lack of training in terms of technical skills is evident as well, as Ms. Reddy receives no technical training to aid her with her admin work. Employees' needs, objectives, and learning styles need to be taken into account to further performance and capabilities. Otherwise, creating value is minimal, as there's minimal learning to transfer. Also, because Ms. Reddy was a competent hire, she should have undergone the 5-step competency work approach, which gradually renders her useful. I recommend that an onboarding program is mandatory for all employees to maximize their effectiveness right out the gate, and then creating a training program utilizing the training program development model that branches off the onboarding, allowing for technical training to be applied if needed. Additionally, KSAOs should be used in the recruiting process to avoid pure competency hires, but if there are set hires, they should follow the gradual 5-step process. The fourth issue is in regards to expanding the job, with underlying issues being a lack of a performance management system and no career development plan, which can create a poor, uninspired workforce. Without the standards in the initial job description, it is difficult to have specific, clear objectives. Within the case, we see Ms. Reddy not receive adequate coaching and feedback and actionable steps to progress further in her capabilities. This leads into a lack of career development plan at JAX, as jobs do not have specific manners or objectives to move forwards. We see Ms. Reddy be offered a generalized timeline for moving into a sales role with no plan to reach the goal. The internal issues regarding unfairness in the workplace, as Mr. Thomas is a harsh leader, paired with no true career post, plus an external job design that has a lack of support for employees, all compile into leading an uninspired workforce, which could pose an issue during the expansion, as it's already an issue with stress and overtime. My recommendations start with obviously creating the job descriptions and having the criteria within the job descriptions to advance internally. HR would also be expanded to include career development within JAX, and a framework would be produced that managers could easily provide feedback, expectations, and ultimately an action plan for workers going forwards. Within the case, it is very evident that there are issues in regards to compensation, as seen with Nessa making exactly half of Sly's base salary, and she doesn't have variable pay. The second principle of pay equity is equal pay for work that may be comparable in. As we know, VP of sales and an HR manager are very different jobs with different importance. However, Nessa's role within the expansion of JAX is actually very close to Mr. Thomas's and is understated. He needs this demand filled by her expansion support, and that's invaluable. While their value on the four principles is not the same, it is clearly not a large enough difference to have such a discrepancy in their pay. Jax does not want the expectancy theory to take effect, as Nessa might feel underpaid and put in less of an effort during their important expansion efforts. My recommendations are by analyzing the current and future financial positions of JAX, the choices of providing either organizational or team variable pay linked to the growth of the company should be implemented. And then this can be switched to a profit sharing model if growth stagnates after successful expansion. In conclusion, JAX needs to define positions within the company and form a comprehensive recruiting plan with standards. Once employees are hired, they will receive the necessary orientation and additional training with feedback and growth towards greater positions within the company. Pay will also be linked to this hard work, as well as having guidance provided. Employees will perform at their best, consistently improve, forming a company culture. Using the timelines put in this PowerPoint, I believe management will be able to make JAX a better work environment. Thank you for listening to our presentation.